Hello, everybody, and welcome to Health Confidential with Simone Gisondi, the podcast where the secrets of the body meet the mysteries of healing. Each week, I explore the powerful world of holistic medicine, blending ancient wisdom and cutting edge science, conventional insight, and unconventional truths to decode some of the toughest cases and the most misunderstood conditions. I'm a certified holistic cancer therapies practitioner, a registered holistic nutritionist, and certified regenerative detoxification specialist. I am not a medical doctor. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. The diagnosis and therapies discussed here may not be right for you. Please consult a qualified healthcare medical provider before making changes to your health. To learn more about my work or to experience the power of the custom-made healing protocols that I develop, designed specifically for your unique body, your unique biochemistry, your history, and your internal terrain, visit simonegisondi.com and book a private consultation with me. And if this episode speaks to you, follow me on Instagram at simone.gisondi and share this episode with someone you love. Thank you for listening, and welcome to today's episode of Health Confidential. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Health Confidential. Today's conversation is such an important one, and I promise you it's going to empower you because it's about something that affects millions upon millions of people, and yet it's often discussed in ways that feel either overly clinical or strangely disconnected from the lived human reality of it, and that is diabetes, my friends. Diabetes. My guest today is Amber, and what interested me about her story is not simply that she faced the diagnosis of it, but that she made significant changes, which of course she's going to share with us, to her habits, to her relationship to her body, and the way that she approached it, that she healed herself. So this episode is really about that journey and her secret, which she's going to share with us. What was happening to her body, what was happening in her life at that time, what did she change, what seemed to matter the most, what she learned about everything that she was living, stress, lifestyle, food, self-awareness, and of course, ultimately healing. And what should have happened that didn't, what should have happened that she controlled, and what we should be careful not to oversimplify, and when we are faced with our own diagnosis, what we can do for ourselves and in our own unique body. So this is not about making any kind of promise to you that this is going to unfold in exactly the same way for you, but I guarantee you that you have your own power over your own body, just like she did over hers. Amber, welcome to my show.
Hi, Simone. Thank you for having me again.
Yes, for those that don't know, I'm going to ask you to actually check out the story that I discussed with Amber in Phenomena Confidential. That is one that is going to absolutely blow your mind. But this one, which is very closely tied, is going to blow your mind equally, if not more so. So, Amber, can we start by maybe you could take us back to the period of your life when you first encountered diabetes, when it first entered the picture of your life? What was happening in your body, in your life at that time? Is this something that you were genetically predisposed to? Was it something that was happening in your family lineage and you kind of accepted the idea that, well, I mean, if my mom and my grandmother had it, of course I'm going to have it too, and you sort of manifested it?
Yes, hi, thank you. And just what you were speaking to, that's absolutely true. We create everything in our lives. And first I want to, say that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, and everything I'm telling you, you got to follow your own intuition and use your own discernment.
Absolutely.
The other thing that's important to know is that each and every one of you is an internal soul. We don't have a soul. I don't have a soul. I am a soul that has a body temporarily to experience this place. And while we're here in forgetfulness with amnesia, we have things like sicknesses that we experience. And one of the sicknesses I had was diabetes type 2. And what happened was I want to say, time's going by so fast now, it's hard to gauge the years. But I'll estimate about 2019. Slowly over time, I found myself just not feeling good. I seemed to be gaining weight with no apparent reason,
Mm.
not understanding, and just not feeling well. And so, of course, everybody was telling me you should go to the doctors, get
Of
checked out.
course.
And so I did. I went to the doctors and I had an elevated A1C. And so
Mm-hmm.
they told me, we can maybe fix this with diet and exercise. We're going to put you on medication. So the first medication I was put on was a tablet. It's called metformin, and that's for diabetes. That's usually like the first medication that they usually start people with,
Yep.
and then see if you can, if that takes care of it. And it didn't. And I was all in my head, knowing that. And here's the thing with programs throughout our life. So my entire life growing up, I was always told that I had to be careful because diabetes runs in the family. My grandfather had it. I have an aunt who has it. And, so it's in the family, I believe, on both sides. And so that knowing, you start creating that knowing. And so my belief and my knowing is that I created this diabetes. And I think it was an experience that I needed to have. And now I've healed myself. But I feel like this was just a path I had to take. And so I kept going
Interesting.
back because they have you go back every 3 months to get your blood sugar taken and, just to do a check in. And the A1C kept going up. And then when my A1C got to a 12.9, so an A1C, what it does is it checks your blood sugar over a 3-month average.
That's
So
right.
a 12.9 is blood sugar around the mid to high 300s. So it's not a good blood sugar to
Yeah, it's
have.
very high.
So when it was a 12.9, they put me on insulin. So I was taking insulin shots twice a day, once in the morning and once at night. And then I was still having higher. It was going down, but it was still on the high side. And they put me on a weekly shot called Trulicity. And Trulicity is another diabetic medication. And then through my work with the great work, right? You see the gold hand there.
Yeah, we'll
I,
talk about
I
that.
yeah, I started to learn techniques through one of the workshops on, how frequency works and how the
Yes.
will of the soul. So the will of the soul is us. The spoken word is the will of the soul. So when I'm using terms like spoken word and will of the soul, that is us in our commands. And there's frequency behind everything. The words you speak, the intentions behind them create our realities today.
Very much
And
so.
myself and many others are living proof of this, where we
Yes.
have healed ourselves. So I started doing deep meditations. I started using affirmations, learning to love myself. So loving yourself is really important. To be able to look yourself in the mirror. I know this sounds cliche, but to be able to look yourself in the eyes and say, I love you. You are worth it.
God, I don't think anybody does that because we are so conditioned to think that, especially as we grow up, that our parents don't show us that love. And especially when you look at people that come from different cultures, even in different households where there's a lot of, let's say, substance abuse or, parental, I guess, conflict between the parents, and then the kids are sort of on the receiving end. They start to blame themselves that, oh, I wasn't good, so mom and dad are fighting because I wasn't good. They were fighting about me not being good, and so on and so forth. But going back to what you said, Amber, I want to know, did the medical community at least kind of put you through the evolution of diabetes, especially type 2? Because type 1 is where your pancreas just is damaged and doesn't produce insulin, in which case you have to take it from the outside. Whereas for type 2, it's typically more of a lifestyle kind of driven. And what happens is you kind of slowly evolve to a full diagnosis. But first, there's like insulin resistance, hyperglycemia. So, like, obviously, your blood sugar is too high, or there's dysglycemia, which means that your blood sugar is not regulated. Did you go through those steps, or did the doctors just say, nope, diabetes, here's your metformin, and you're good to go and change what you eat?
Yeah, so it started off, like I said, with just the metformin, and then it transitioned into insulin and then Trulicity, which are all drugs to try to keep your blood sugars regulated.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, I never changed the way I was eating. I wasn't like a health freak or anything. I would
Yeah,
have desserts and things like that, but I was never an overeater. I would never like pig out on sweets and candy and not eat a healthy meal, right? So I was eating fish, steak, chicken, pasta, rice, things of that nature. And for some reason, and I believe it was the programming I had it in me thinking that I was going to end up with diabetes, whether I was aware of that or not. It's what I was told and programmed unintentionally by family, right? Because
that's
it's in
right.
the family. And that's what the doctors say, that it's hereditary. So it's not like they intentionally programmed me like that. Everything they were saying to me was out of concern from coming from love, right? I did come from a loving family and still do. But yeah, so I started using meditation and the spoken word to
Mm,
speak to my cells, to speak to my pancreas, and just tell
amazing.
my cells in my pancreas that they are God's, that they are love, that they are the light, the beginning and the end, that they are whole. Diabetes does not exist in my body. And I decided this one day that it was enough. I had enough. And that word, in and of itself, with the love I had for myself behind it, was enough to change it. So when I said enough, I threw my insulin in the trash. I was still taking the metformin, but I started with the insulin, which is kind of the bigger one, the
Yeah,
injections.
yeah.
And so I threw that in the trash. And 2.5 or so months later, when I went and got my blood drawn again for my A1C, it was a 5.5, which is normal.
Yes, yes. I want people to know that that's a normal number, but also that you went so from 12.6, I think you said,
12.9 was the
12.9, so practically 13 down to 5.5. That's incredible. And I wanted to tell people because what you said about the mindset of it, so you kind of accepted the idea that because people in your family had been diagnosed with this, that you would naturally kind of fall into that same thing. My grandfather was diabetic, type 2 as well. However, so my grandfather on my mom's side, he was a chef and he was working at this really great, very popular restaurant. And people loved his food. He was really great. So they used to always send drinks to him, alcohol. So he slowly, I mean, he was an alcoholic, but he was one of those alcoholics that can actually function, so functional alcoholic. And so he would go and people would just send him drinks like as thanks for, the great food. And eventually he became diabetic. And then eventually he became blind because he didn't manage it. And then eventually he developed gangrene. And then eventually they amputated both of his legs. So he ended up dying with two amputated legs as well as the blindness. However, all of us in the family were told that from the doctor, because he learned this from the doctor, that diabetes was as a result of his drinking. So none of us thought like, oh, we're going to get diabetes because grandpa got diabetes. We were all like, oh, okay, well, as long as you don't drink alcohol, you're good. So nobody else in the family actually, because nobody accepted that on a mental level as something that is going to naturally be the case for the rest of us in, the forthcoming generations, because we just thought like that. Alcohol equals diabetes, so don't touch alcohol and you're not going to get diabetes. Um, so in that regard, I so believe what you said about the fact that you just accepted it and we are programmed to think that. But I want to know, when you were diagnosed, how did that feel for you emotionally? How did you accept something in your body that you're like, well, okay, I'm diabetic? Did you tie your identity to the disease? And then you were put on medication. So I want to know, did that alter how you were feeling? Did it change how you thought about yourself? Like, oh man, like I'm a diabetic and shit, I'm going to be on meds for the rest of my life. This is horrible. Or were you just like easygoing about it, and then eventually you're like, no, actually, no, I don't want to have this thing, and I'm just buy insulin, and I'm good. I'm just going to take care of this myself.
Sure. So it actually put me into a very depressive state.
Oh,
You
wow.
know, I was overweight, so I was insecure about the way I looked, how clothes fit on my body. I hated myself. And
Shit.
I was sad, and I just thought I was going to have this for the rest of my life. It's genetic, and there's nothing at this point I can do. I'm like, I don't know how else to eat. Like, do I starve myself? Like, so yeah, I accepted it. And it wasn't until I started learning how frequency works and how the spoken word and the will of the soul works and
That's
how
right.
we create, right? Because we are a soul. And this works. It really does work. And
Absolutely.
so there's the placebo effect, and I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit and how that works, but we are the placebo. And so just knowing that I could do it, just that knowing
Yes.
is what did it. And so when I speak it and the intention is that knowing behind my words, my cells and the waters within me has no choice but to bend to that. To the cells in our body, our voice and our spoken word is God to them, and they
Yes.
listen. Absolutely.
Yes. So what was the moment, or was there a moment for that matter, when you realized that nope, I'm just going to take my health, because it's my health, into my own hands, and I'm going to not negotiate with the outcome? Was there something that brought you to that, or was it just you went through as many things as you could, including the meds, and then eventually you just kind of hit rock bottom, if you will, and then it forced you to change your mindset. It forced you to look for an alternative outside of the realms of medicine, and of course the idea that we do create our own health. We are the boss of our own cells. The body does bend to what we tell it, and it does obey the instructions and the information that we feed it, be it through thoughts, be it through meditations, be it through the foods that we eat, consciousness work, much like what you're doing. What was that moment?
So the moment for me was I had taken the frequency workshop, and
Ah,
I always knew intuitively that we can manifest. And, if we want to have a better life or a better path, we have to start thinking that way and,
okay.
creating that with our thoughts. But it wasn't until the way things were broken down in that frequency workshop, that everything just connected. We talked about the original baptism and, different frequencies and sound healing, right? Everything used to be tuned to the note A at 432 hertz. And,
Hurts.
and now they're tuning the note A to 440 hertz, which is destructive to the cells in and of itself. The music that's out today, I changed the music I was listening to. Everything that they put out there for us on the radio, played at that frequency, tears down the cells. It really does. And so taking that
Yes.
knowing and that knowledge, and I just started using it. I said enough. I started meditating, using the affirmations. I learned to love myself, which was a huge step because I went from hating myself and just being completely uncomfortable in my own skin to absolutely loving myself and knowing who I am. And
So,
yes, it does help to have out of body experiences, to have that real full understanding that we are eternal souls. But you don't need an out of body to heal yourself. You just need to know you can do it to begin with.
yeah, I remember I posted something on my social media, on my Instagram, that the foundational thing, and you and I talked about this on the other podcast, the foundational thing is belief. You have to believe that you can do it. You have to believe that it's possible. You have to believe that your body is going to execute on it. So that is fundamental to it. And yes, what you said about the frequency, I really wanted to touch on that. And you and I discussed the idea of how in more historic times they used to have a lot of things that were actually conducive to healing, that were natural, and those would be bells in cathedrals, especially, or in churches in small towns. And the bells would be big enough that when they would be rung, it would actually create that ripple effect of that frequency throughout the town. And the people's bodies would absorb that frequency so that they can actually help heal whatever ailment they had at the time, even though at that time we didn't have, the cell towers and the stressors and the Wi-Fi and, the cars and the pollution and all of the things that we have in the industrial world right now, including, of course, the stress of the financial hardship that people experience. And also, what you mentioned about the fact that you didn't love yourself, was there like a disassociation? Like, did you just hate your body because you said that you had gained weight and your clothes were not fitting properly or differently? Did you not like yourself as a person? Because from what you said, your background, your family life was a normal, happy one. So there was nothing there that would have inclined you to think less of yourself, but rather was it just that the diagnosis kind of led you to feel that way about yourself overall, or just your body and your body? Because a lot of people kind of think their body is betraying them.
Yeah. So I wasn't comfortable with the way I looked or felt. So mind you, when I had the diabetes, full blown diabetes, I was lethargic all of the time. I would struggle to get up every day, to get up and in the shower and ready for work.
Makes
That
sense.
was
Yeah.
very difficult for me. And I would find myself on my days off just sleeping them away because I was so tired.
Yeah.
I never had energy. I didn't want to go out because I didn't like the way I looked. I didn't like the way clothes fit on my body. So there was just a lot of self-betrayal within that. Yeah.
Terrible. Yeah, for those people that are listening, so the lethargy that Amber is speaking about, and I know that there are some people who are extremely thin and are obviously diabetic. So for the thin is, or for even for what Amber was saying, so you were lethargic because the sugar was not getting in the cell for it to get the energy from the sugar, which is typically how we feel the energy from the foods, and or it converts it to ketones if you're not eating sugar. And a lot of people, when they have this insulin resistance, what happens is the body kind of turns to the stored fat because it has no other way. It just says, I need energy to function, even to carry out the bodily functions. So it turns to eating the fat. So a lot of people see, and my grandfather was like that, which is what fascinated me, because there are people who get overweight and there are people who are extremely thin. So my grandfather was extremely thin. So your body actually turns to the fat storage to be able to maintain its, obviously it needs some sort of a source of energy. So that's what happens to people that actually look sort of emaciated, yet they're diabetic. Because a lot of times people are like, what? Wait, diabetic people are usually overweight. So I wanted to touch on that so people can understand it. So it was just the fact that it was that, and so it was just the way that you looked, but also yourself. And of course, the diagnosis never helps anybody, and no diagnosis ever helps anybody. But what led you to the work that you started doing with the frequency? Was it just sort of somebody said, hey, have you ever, or was just a personal inclination? Because when you began changing things, you obviously thought, okay, I need to focus on area A, B, and C, and I'm going to start with A, and A is frequency. So that's where I'm going first.
Just having that full understanding about frequency in the spoken word is what did it for me. Like making that connection during that workshop changed everything on how I thought about myself and what I can do to change the health in the cells and the waters within me. So it was during that I made all of the connections, and I was like, wow, I can actually do this. And I could feel it inside of me. It was like an energy in it
Yes,
in and of itself, of just that knowing. It was so empowering that I was able to throw the insulin away, knowing that
I
this
love
is a
that.
new chapter. Like I'm done with it.
I love that. I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I think that you've done way more work than I have in this realm. I mean, I've studied it more than practiced it, but I am fascinated by it, and I'm doing the work myself now. But would you say that our body, And again, what you were talking about, like the music you listen to and everything, the inputs. So let's say you're sitting in a workshop or you're sitting in some sort of a seminar, whatever you want to call it, lecture, and then somebody delivers a message to you. Your cells, your body, your every fiber of your being, based on the frequency or the energetic signature, because that's what I usually used to tell people. I'm like, I know you're lying to me. There's an energetic signature that I could feel you're lying to me. And people are like, oh my God, are you a witch? Like, no, I just feel energy. That's all. So when you are face to face with a truth, the energy and the energetic signature and the frequency of the message that comes to you, your body tells you, responds to you, yes, that's true. Yes, that's resonant with me. Yes, that's the path. Go for it. Do it. Go forward with it. Is that a correct assumption? Is that what you would say was the translation of what you just described?
That is a very beautiful translation. When you
Excellent.
hear truth, you feel it. It is a frequency and an
Very true.
energy. And like you said, you know when somebody's lying to you, you can feel that. It's like a repulsion. But when you hear truth in something and you know absolutely this is it,
Yeah.
you feel that inside of you.
Yeah. I really want people to know. So if people can, I mean, you could tell us more about the great work, Amber, but I really want people to learn at the very least, if we're going to be looking at the health aspect of life. I mean, there's many aspects. But if you're going to look at the health aspect of life, at least if you can do work that would allow you to be able to translate the messages from your body. So when you go to the doctor and the doctor gives you a diagnosis, if you are well versed enough, or if you're attuned enough, or if you're in touch with your body enough, your body will give you an instant response, whether that is indeed the case, or at the very least, even if they do give you bad news, quote unquote, at least let it be that you're accepting that there is some sort of a, let's say, frequency imbalance in your body that can very easily be addressed and that you don't have to think of it as doom and gloom. And I think that there's a lot of that right now. And with what happened circa 2020, it was just a big ripple effect worldwide. And a lot of people accepted that as truth, even though those of us that have felt knew it wasn't. And a lot of people that accepted it as truth was like, well, so and so died and so got sick. And it's like, and I was trying to explain to them, like, yes, you very much, your body said, oh, you want this? Sure. Yeah. Well, like, I will deliver on this 100%. So I want people to understand that the inputs really, really affect what you feel and what you experience, even the foods that we eat. So if you could tell us about that, even like going back to when you did the work so that you could heal yourself, did your relationship with food change, or did you just say, no, I just reject the idea of this diagnosis and I'm just going to continue to enjoy whatever I've been eating until now, and that's that, and case closed?
Yeah, the only part of my relationship with food that changed is I implemented fasting into my life.
Okay.
So I'm basically fasting all of the time. I do what they call implement fasting. Sorry, having a hard time with that word right now.
Intermittent fasting?
Intermittent fasting, exactly.
Okay.
So I do intermittent fasting where I'm just eating once a day, which is usually around supper time. So anywhere between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m., depending on what time I get out of work and what I have going on that night. But right now I'm doing, so every time it's a new moon, I do this 72-hour water fast. So when the new
Beautiful.
moon cycle comes in, I'll completely not eat any food. I'll just have salt and water, but I have the good salt. And that's all I have for 72 hours. So I'll do
Beautiful.
3 day fasting sometimes. The longest one I ever did was 7 days. And that was hard the first 4 days, but I did it with a group of people, which made it a little bit easier because we would meet on Zoom and have discussions on how we were feeling. But on day 4 of that fast, I feel like my heart blasted open. Like I was driving home one day from my aunt's house, actually, and I was driving home and I just suddenly felt like I could explode with love. Like I'm looking at the trees and like I could feel the trees like they were communicating with me. And I
Yeah.
was telling the trees, I love you, you're beautiful. And I just felt so much love for everyone and everything that it literally brought me to tears. I
I
got
believe it.
home and I got on the Zoom with my friends and I was just sharing so much love with them and just telling them about my experience. And I have to say that that's from the fasting. You know, when you're fasting, your body's not digesting food, which uses a lot of energy. And when your
That's right.
body's using energy for digestion, it's not using it for other things, right? So, I don't
And
know.
it's
There's a lot of,
also processing all of the energy that's been kind of
yeah.
stored in the body from traumas, from heartbreaks. And I was actually having this conversation with my group today, and we were talking about how we go through life many times and we go through an event, be it at an office where you're working or in a family situation or a family event, when something happens and you can't in that moment express, so you have the lump in your throat, you swallow it, you hold back your tears, so your body's trying to move energy out to express, and you're just suppressing it, pushing it back down. And we do that so often that we actually never really process all of that stuff. Eventually, down the line, the body's going to say, like, I'm at capacity here. There's no more space for me to put this. The nervous system is at max. A lot of people could even speak to how it's actually in a lot of their tissues. So there's a lot of massage therapists or those that actually do a lot of physical manipulation, and a lot of them can speak to the fact that when they work with their patients or with their clients, they actually touch a certain area and the person starts to cry because it opens the channel for the energy to be expressed. So that's a lot of trauma, right? So a lot of that, what you just described, is from when you allow the body to process. And I think fasting is hands down. I'm going to actually go on the record and say this. It is the number one healer physically, the number one healer in the world. And it's free because all you have to do is just abstain, literally. That's it.
I
It's free.
agree.
All of the self-healing mechanisms are free. So when you meditate, that's free. Breath work, so that you can actually move energy like on command, free. Fasting, free. And your body is able to, at obviously cellular level, your body, because it's an ecosystem that knows what's happening in what area, because all cells kind of communicate with each other, your body is going to produce all of the and I'm going to use this term very loosely, all the pharmaceuticals that your body actually needs. And I'm talking about dopamine, serotonin, all kinds of, even insulin, because that's a hormone, or other hormones that people take from outside. So your body is programmed and able to do all the things that the medical community is trying to do, as long as you have proper inputs and as long as you allow the body to work through all of the energy. So I'm so glad that you talked about that, because I want people to have those kind of experiences. But you kind of spoke to that when you just mentioned the fasting and how your heart opened at the 4-day mark. And for those of you that are wondering about fasting, I've done fasting since for so long. During COVID, I did an 11-day dry fast, which was, I was like out of this world. However, I want people to know that, because a lot of people think, and of course this is like a bigger episode and a bigger topic. A lot of people think that they're going to starve to death when they fast. Just even what Amber said earlier, when you were talking about the fact that you accepted that you're probably going to have diabetes, it's the same way. If psychologically you look at fasting as a deprivation and famine, yes, your body's going to respond. It's going to be like, you just gave me a command that we're going through some existential crisis. Okay, like I'm going to, mobilize all things to make sure that you don't die. So you create this, biochemistry that is not aligned with health. However, if you look at fasting as a modality for healing, I'm healing my body, I'm giving it a rest, I'm giving my digestive system a rest. Thank you so much for working for me so hard. You always give to me. I want to give back to you. Take a rest, take a vacation, recharge. All good. I got it from here. All thoughts are all in the positive direction. I know you're healing and you are whole and perfect according to the divine template. All good with me. If you approach it that way, oh my god, the outcome is literally divine. But I wanted to know, how did your relationship, because you said that you started doing the frequency work and you accepted yourself, so did your relationship with yourself, you loved the trees when you did the fasting, but did your relationship with you yourself inside of you change for your health to actually really go towards the better?
It did. I started loving myself, which is
Amazing.
huge.
Yes.
When you don't love yourself, when you start giving yourself love, that affects the cells in your body,
Yeah.
right? When it just, and we can talk about the rice experiment I did where I had 2 jars of rice. I
Yeah.
wrote, I love you on one jar, I hate you on another jar. And I put a half a cup of rice in one, half, same thing, each one, half a cup of rice,
Yeah.
full cup of water in each one. And over 35 days, I didn't just speak love to the love jar. I gave the jar love. I would hug the jar and treat it like it's my pet and just give it
Oh,
so
wow.
much love
So
because
even physical.
it's the intention behind the word too.
Amazing.
It's feeling that love. If you just say words, I watched other YouTube videos where people did the rice experiment. They're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that didn't work." They were just saying words without feeling anything behind it. So the
Yeah.
feeling and intention behind the words is so important. And so when you're going to use this on yourself for healing yourself, you have to have feelings of love and caring behind those words and commands. And so I would give love to the love jar, real love. In the hate jar, I did the opposite. I would say bad words to it and really give hate. But the jar never molded, so I have to wonder, like, I don't know. There's a lot more to be said about that.
We did talk
But
about this, if you remember, on the other
yeah.
episode. I think that if fundamentally you shifted to a degree, and I wanted to know whether this was like instant or whether you kind of transitioned slowly, like, oh, well, I was still feeling this way. I'd like to take a quick break now to let you know that today's show is sponsored by my book, Against Medical Advice. This book is a memoir and it tells the story of how I built my life back after suffering a stroke during my divorce. I discuss the nutritional, lifestyle, and mindset aspects that I put into practice to regain my health and rebuild my life. The book has been a labor of love, both writing it and publishing it, and I couldn't be more proud of it. Please pick up your copy from Amazon. For your very own signed copy, my email address is simone@simonegisondi.com. Oh, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd please consider leaving a review once you've read the book. And now, back to the show. This way, and then I kind of took another couple of steps and I was feeling better and I loved myself more and more and more. But I think that if you started doing this rice experiment at the point when you're like, just like your heart opened and you're like, just, we are all connected, just put out love. There was no way you could give hate to that jar, Amber.
Yeah, so I think maybe it had a lot to do with the music, but just saying the words that I said by themselves was probably breaking it down because in the love jar, the rice was absorbing some of the water and turning like a white color, and the
Yeah,
water had like a nice ferment to it.
yeah.
Where the hate jar, the rice stayed the same color it is when it comes out of the bag, and it wasn't really absorbing water. So when I would have the 2 jars next to each other, one jar looked like it had, the love jar looked like it had more rice in it because it was bigger, it was absorbing water. Where the hate jar just looked, but the water in the hate jar was also turning like this yellow brownish color as
Oh,
well.
okay.
And so playing 369 frequency to the love jar, playing death metal, bad music to the hate jar. And after 35 days, I was like, okay, why don't I reverse it? So I erased I hate you on the jar and I wrote I love you. And I started giving love to that jar too. And I
Okay.
did the same with both jars. And the jar that I started calling Love Jar 2, it didn't get better, but it didn't get worse. It did start to absorb a little bit of water, but not so much. But this goes to show if you hate yourself, if you're not giving yourself and your cells
So true.
love, you're not absorbing water. You're not absorbing things the way that you should, right? So this the rice in the hate jar is not absorbing water. The water's turning to a nasty color because there was no love put into that jar. And that's what we do to our bodies when we self hate. We're
So
tearing
true.
down our own cells in our body. So it's so important, even if it seems cliche. Just practice by looking in the mirror and just telling yourself, I love you. And it's going to feel really freaking weird at first. I promise you, it's going to feel weird. But after a while, and you do meditations, you say affirmations, right? I am love. I love. I am the beginning and the end. I am the spark. I am a God. I am forgiven, past, present, and future,
That's right.
right? I want to see myself without borders, boundaries, and limitations. I have a whole list of affirmations that I say to myself. After a while, you start believing it,
Yeah,
right? Because you're reprogramming yourself. And while you're reprogramming yourself, you're also reprogramming the cells and the waters within your body. I want to say it's magic, but it's not. It's just how it is.
I think it seems like magic because we have not been programmed, no pun intended, since you that's all you were talking about. We have not been programmed to believe that those are natural processes. That when we do tell ourselves those kind of things, that the body just says, "Oh, okay, yeah, yeah," and or you could even, depending, I guess, on the situation, I am healed, I am whole. My body is running at 100% on everything exactly as it's intended to. My body has been returned to the divine template or the template of perfection or the blueprint of life or if you can just take anything that you have to say and apply its positive, I guess, counterpart to it. If you think anything negative about yourself, if you think anything negative about your health, if you think anything negative about anything, your finances, your significant other, blah, 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 and you throw as much positive energy as that, because what you were talking about, the love jar, the rice jar that you were giving love to, and you said that it had grown. If you think about it, when we give something energy, it grows, right? So, in that regard, if you give thought to the idea that you have cancer, you're going to grow it. And people are like, oh my God, my tumor grew. It's like, well, you are constantly feeding it, especially if in the background you're thinking even in negative terms. Oh my God, I have cancer. Oh my God, I have cancer. That energy of those thoughts that's energy. Even though it's negative, it's still energy that's moving towards that target. So if you can flip it and just say, I'm healed, I'm whole, I'm perfect, my body's amazing, I love you, cells, thank you for the work you do, and you just feed positivity, I think it's and I know you just refer to it as magic or supernatural, but it's actually so normal because, and we're just now at that frontier of finding out that that's just always been there. We just haven't touched it until now. And I guarantee you that 20 years down the line, people are just going to be manifesting health and money and all of that just like that by speaking it into creation, much like how we are now sort of coming to realize that is possible. So when you started to make these changes, Amber, what did you first notice as the first change where you're like, ah, there you go. See? What was the first thing?
So the first thing I felt was energy. I didn't feel as lethargic because I was feeling empowered. Just that knowing,
Yeah.
that internal knowing that I can make this difference in my life, that I no longer subscribe to the diabetes program. That was what I felt first. And then I started noticing that my pants were feeling a little bit big on me, right? And then it got to the point where I needed to buy new pants, new belts.
Yes.
Then going to the doctors and A1C's normal. right? And so my A1C would fluctuate a little bit too. It would go up to where they would call it pre-diabetes. It went up to like a 6.5 or 6.7 or something like that. But then it would go back down again and fluctuate like that. But I just stay with my beliefs. I do not have diabetes. I am 100% healed. You know, the
And
waters within me are perfect.
from a physiological perspective, for those people that are saying, oh, how come her A1C was like fluctuating? So when your body starts to release, because your body's like all in this tense. And once your body starts to release and you've opened, much like what you said about how when your heart opened. So imagine when your body opens and it starts to dump all that blood sugar that was holding on to for dear life, which usually gets trapped in the blood. That's why we have like high blood sugar. That's when you're going to see those fluctuations. And I think that a lot of people don't understand how that works, but that's typically how it works. And we see a lot of that even in the detoxification when we put people through detox routines. The same thing. You put them through and then they start doing what you tell them to do, even dietarily. And then their blood sugar spikes and they're like, what you're doing doesn't work. And it's like, no, your blood your blood is releasing the sugar. It's perfectly normal. You will see it's going to stabilize. And for those that you could get to relax, and you see that eventually it kind of like flatlines and it gets to a normal range. So I really want people to understand. So exactly what I have learned is exactly what you're describing. Your body finally released, and then afterwards it obviously dumped all of the things that were making your blood work look like it was kind of like oscillating and all over the place. So would you then say, Amber, because I really want people to understand this, that we're talking about your situation with diabetes, but I want people to understand that this is not specific to diabetes. This is just your situation and what you faced or what you were afflicted with. Would it be appropriate or factual or correct to say that this can be the case with any situation and that it applies in equal measure from a perspective of when you will your body or you put your thoughts and of course the work that you're doing, that it would apply equally to any situation? You have high blood pressure? There you go. This is the template of health. Oh, you have, let's say, arthritis? Template of health right here. Because we all have bodies and everything that we are afflicted with, all of these disruptions or imbalances in the energy body, if you want to call it that, kind of expresses differently for different people. And I think that there's probably interwoven things of other situations, other layers, such as traumas, the way that you view life, especially like when it comes to, high blood pressure. If you're all tightened up and the blood is like the liquid of life, blood is trying so hard to go through the blood vessels, it's having a hard time because you're so wound up. So there's that kind of psycho-spiritual aspect to it. Would you say that it applies the same in equal measure to any condition that anybody has?
Absolutely. And again, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but
None of us are.
I am an eternal soul that knows with all of my being that this would work with absolutely anything. Think
Yes.
about people, and people can look up these studies, people with split personalities. One personality has diabetes, the other one doesn't. When the
Yes.
personality changes, the blood sugar changes. People with tumors. One personality has tumors, the other one doesn't have tumors, and they come and go in real time.
Yeah.
So, how is that possible if we are not eternal souls that use the will of our soul to command our reality with an absolute knowing, is what it is? One personality absolutely knows that they don't have diabetes, therefore the blood sugar is normal.
Yeah.
The other personality has the opposite knowing, and therefore their blood sugar is high or too low, or whatever the result was. And it's the same thing with the tumors. One personality believes it,
Yeah.
the other one doesn't. It's the absolute knowing that you have to have within you.
So I want to say on that note, I did post something like this about a woman who was afflicted with blindness, and she had numerous personalities. And in one of the sessions that she had with the I think she was working with a psychologist, and in one of their therapy sessions, one of her personalities was a young boy, or a young man, adolescent, let's say, and that personality showed up. And on the side table in that room where they were doing the therapy was a magazine. And this personality picked up the magazine and started reading from it. This was a blind woman. This personality shows up and it starts to read. So clearly the blindness was poof, gone. So then it only reasons, and of course, much like you said, I do have the disclaimer in the beginning of each show that, please consult with your physician if you so choose to. And these are not medical, we're not giving medical advice, and we're not diagnosing anything here. However, this is information that's out there for people to look into and to research. There are many instances, especially when people go in under hypnosis, where you see the emergence of certain, let's call them identities of the individual from, let's say, a previous life. And you see the physical effects of this when the person is sweating profusely. They're experiencing an illness in real time as they take on that identity or on that personality. So whatever is programmed into the personality will express physically in the physical avatar, in the physical body, in the vessel. So therefore, if you can now take your identity, because oftentimes most people have one identity that they carry throughout their life and they identify with it. If you take this identity and you give it instructions, much like what you described, to express differently, and you take this new identity that expresses differently. So it's expressing full health, it's expressing abundance, it's expressing love. And you take on this and you just say, like, from now on, this is who I am. And that other identity is gone and I don't want to revisit it. Or if you so choose, I'm sure you could probably maybe do this a test on your own, adopt a couple of personalities and go back and forth between the two. I don't know how easy that would be, but that's something that people can test out. And please, write me and let me know if it worked. But
That's a
it
good
does.
example. That's a really good example because it is taking on a new identity.
Yeah.
I decided in that moment, enough. And that was it. That's the new identity. This identity does not have diabetes. Insulin went in the trash.
Yeah.
Medicine was soon to follow. I did end up throwing away the rest of the medications, and now I'm on zero medications for diabetes whatsoever. And I even stopped going to get my blood drawn because the last few were normal, and I decided, well, hey, why am I bother going? There's nothing to test for.
That's right. I'm so glad that you said this. So I want to tell the audience the reason why I resonated so much with your story, because so if you're just tuning into my show right now, I suffered what the medical community calls a stroke back in 2011. And I remember I was in the hospital and I was alone a lot in the hospital. And so I was alone with my thoughts a lot. And I remember that I came one day to a point where I was like, no, I don't want to have this anymore. And I decided that day that I'm going to leave the hospital, which I did. The medical community did not want to let me leave. They kept saying, like, you're leaving against medical advice. They were trying to, obviously, like everything they were saying, and this is what the medical community does because they go by data and statistics. They said to me, you are at a very high risk of a second stroke because it's too close to the first one, and the second one is going to kill you. And I'm like, in my head, like I let them speak, but in my head, I'm like, nope, I'm not ready to go anywhere. I'm just not. But I remember, and it's so difficult to put this into words, and maybe Amber, you could better because maybe you've learned something I haven't, but it's so difficult to explain to people how I felt in that moment because I felt the energy you described. I remember when I made the decision and I was convinced, I felt, and I actually wrote a book about this, and in the book I said this, I said I felt like somebody plugged me into a plug. Like I felt energy going through my body. Like it actually literally, I felt charged. Like I felt like something was moving it through my body. The energy of that decision when I just said, like, my cells were probably like, you guys, we have a new blueprint. Like, abort mission with what we've done until now. We're operating under a new command. Okay, let's go. Literally, that's how I felt. I felt the surge of energy and forward I went. I remember I went back. I went back to school. And yes, I stayed on my meds because they had me on all kinds of med. Coumadin was the number one. And then they also had me on the baby aspirin because they wanted to make sure that my blood wouldn't coagulate to create new blood clots. And I remember I was feeling horrible. Like those things were making me feel horrible. And I remember one day I did exactly what you did. I just said, nope, I'm not taking these anymore. And I just abruptly stopped taking them. Not that I'm saying anybody should stop taking their meds abruptly. I'm not definitely not saying that. I mean, I did that for myself, but you take on the risk when you do such things. But again, I'd like to go back. My body was already probably programmed to just operate with those things not even being needed anymore. So I love what you said about that. So now we could say that the human template or our avatar that takes direction from the non-tangible world on how to operate, and we could do that through our thoughts, which again are non-tangible, but it's an input and an instruction to the body. Can we do that? I'm sure that if I don't ask this question, people are going to write me to say, like, what can you say about this? A lot of people have been affected by, let's say, some of the, let's call them the medical interventions of about 2021 when COVID was sort of in full swing. So a lot of people have been suffering with side effects from this medical intervention from the COVID era. Can we say that in equal measure, just like we are afflicted with certain things that have been affecting us, such as diabetes, such as stroke, such as high blood pressure, such as arthritis, such as cancer, can we give the same command to the body to override something that was inserted into the body so that it actually operates as if it's not there?
Absolutely. And I'm going to answer that question in more detail. But first, Simone, I want to comment on something you said a little bit ago. The energy that you felt through your body when you knew that you weren't accepting it anymore, when you were in the hospital and you were going home. That energy, that thing you felt, that was your soul. That was the real you, which is your soul. And that was the love for yourself. And it was the
Wow.
absolute knowing that's coming from the soul. So that's what that was.
Oh
I
my
think that's
God.
important for the
Thank
viewers to
you
know.
so much for that because nobody has ever said that to me. And my spiritual awakening, if you want to call it that, happened with that event. So I was very in the unknown at that time. I mean, I was, very much asleep, kind of walking through life. And then when that event happened, I remember when I came home, but I remember feeling that and I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And then, of course, like I just had downloads of things. And then I was like, what is happening to me? What's going on? What is this knowledge? And then, of course, just that recognition of like, I would go to the doctor because, of course, they would say, like, you have to come for your appointments. We have to make sure that your brain is progressing. So it's like the post stroke care, if you will, because that's what they called it. And I remember coming into these appointments and they would say things and my body screaming, they're like, they're lying. Don't take that. Reject, reject. So I remember going through these changes at like such a personal level for myself. And I was like trying to still make sense of them because it was like my journey in that realm has just started. So thank you so much for saying that. I had no idea that it was my soul that was actually like communicating with me to say, I applaud you. Good girl.
Absolutely. Your soul said enough, and therefore you, which is your soul, said enough. And that was
Yeah.
it. And that feeling you had was it. That was the love for yourself to make changes
Yeah.
and get on the path that you are on today.
Yeah.
Right? This was like the wake up call. It was like the moment. And even though it happened in a hospital, what better place to have it happen? Enough. I'm going home. I don't care what you all say.
Yeah.
I know, and you knew, and that's what did it right there, that knowing.
Yeah.
And then back to your other question about 2021, yes, people can use these same techniques for that as well. I did. So I didn't wake up until after 2020, 2021. I started waking up to the nature of reality and who and what I really am, which is an eternal soul, until about 2023,
Oh, wow. Okay.
right? So I had already been vaccinated,
Hmm.
right? I had a vaccine and I had two boosters without knowing what was really going on with that and the stuff that and how different bodies were reacting to those vaccines with having strokes and heart attacks. And so, knowing that I was working on my diabetes and that my blood sugars had already been getting good, I was like, I'm going to use this same technique to command whatever was injected into my body out of my body. And
Yeah.
so it was. It was gone. So,
There
yes,
you go. So that's how it's done. So, irrespective of anything, the final frontier is that we have the final power. We command our body to take instruction from us. And the instructions that we give it, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, and when I say subconsciously, it's those programs that we have been obviously told that we're not enough, or that we're, not healthy or diseased, or that we are not abundant and we're poor and we're this and we're that. And those actually, the body executes on those, and the body then expresses it. And I want to say I did try to have this conversation, and not everybody's ready for this, but I'm so happy that we're putting this out on this podcast, because I want people to, at least we're planting the seeds. I did try to have this conversation with one of my clients, and I did say to this client that you just have to sort of take on this new identity, and that identity is of you as a healed person. And that did not land well. So not everybody's ready for that conversation, which is okay, but that is the path, and eventually you come to it. And I do want to say, because and please tell me how you feel about this. I'm sure you're going to agree with me, Amber, but there are many instances, and I when I was going through my studies, I saw so many of them, and it was the most fascinating thing that I've ever studied, aside from the anatomy and physiology and chemistry and all of the things that I studied in school, that there are spontaneous remissions, there are spontaneous healings. There is a woman who wrote a book, and very much to everything that you said. Her name is Anita Murjani, and I'm trying to get her on my show as well. So she had late stage cancer. I mean, she went to the other side. Her body was full of tumors, like late stage. They told her that she wasn't going to make it. And then she went to the other side, and she realized that she actually didn't love herself. And then she made that last minute, last second, if you will, decision. And then in that moment, everything changed. And she came back, and she's alive and well, and she's speaking to crowds about what actually you have to do. And it's not, she wasn't going through the medical world that healed her or anything of that nature. It was a very spontaneous thing. It was that decision that you make, and your body takes command from that. And I remember seeing all of these stories, one which, and I'm paraphrasing, so whoever's listening, if you've heard the story, including you, Amber, I don't know if you've heard. So there was this guy, one of his family members was sick, cancer, and he went and he took this piece of wood, or a ring or something made out of this wood, and he went and he said to this family member, like, I got this from a blessed tree. It's a divine tree that comes from I don't know where out in the world, and it's blessed. And this old man took this piece of wood, and he was holding it on to say, this is my, like, it's coming from God, it's from the divine, it's going to heal me. He gave so much belief to this piece of wood that this person basically, like, brainwashed him, for lack of a better term, and he healed his cancer.
absolutely. There's many studies behind this where patients are given placebo pills and they're healed. It's not the bark of the tree. It's not the placebo pill. It's your belief in
Believe.
knowing within that it can do that to you to begin with. So it's not the bark and the pill, like I said, it's you, the soul. It's you, the soul, that is giving love and healing to the body and commanding health. Absolutely.
So, for those of you that are listening, because there's a lot of people who are saying, well, chemotherapy worked for so and so, but it didn't for so and so. If the person who it worked for believed to their core that I'm going to be healed, I'm going to be okay, this is going to heal me, and then they make it, and there you go. Yes, 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 that is very possible. And then those ones that are probably running the loop of the program that, oh my God, I have terminal cancer and I'm going to die. Because so and so, and this study said that this is the most terminal cancer and this is the most aggressive cancer, your body's going to say, oh, okay, sure, we'll terminate now, no problem. The soul keeps going on. I mean, that's inevitable, but it's the body that obviously sort of gives up. So, in that regard, then anything in the realm of health is waiting for us to give it instruction, to give it input, to give it information, to give it direction, so that it can actually then apply that information that we give it so that it can continue on and be able to repair itself as we see fit. And oftentimes, sometimes people actually repair partially because I think it's probably in relation to the depth and the robustness of the belief. And so there's another thing that I heard, the same thing. One guy, this is another story for those of you that want to know, and it's on my Instagram. There's a guy who decides to commit suicide. Okay, so he goes and he takes all of these like antidepressant pills that he has, takes them all. He starts to hyperventilate. Last minute, in the last second, he's like, oh shit, I don't want to die. Hold on. So he calls 911. They take him to the hospital and they're like, what did you take so we could give you the respective thing to counteract? And he said, I don't know. I'm actually part of this study that they're doing on this new medication. So they're freaking out, frantically trying to figure out like, okay, who did you do this study with so that they could track it back to the pharmaceutical company or whoever is making these drugs. They finally get in touch with, this company, and they find out that he was actually part of the placebo study. He wasn't even taking the real drug. So they come back to him. So he's like, his body's literally going towards death, as he's believing that he's committing suicide. They come back to him and they say, you're fine, you're part of the placebo. And within, I think it was like 5 minutes, like all of his stuff like stabilized, all of his vitals stabilized. They gave him this piece of information, that's all it was. And he believed it, obviously, because they set him free. They said, you're fine, you're not gonna die, you're good, you're part of the placebo. Imagine if we could just go to this degree and we do that to ourselves.
And that's the type of knowing it takes. It's the
Yeah.
absolute knowing. He absolutely thought he was overdosing on some kind of poison that could shut down his organs, and therefore his organs start shutting down. And he starts
Yep.
going into this state of the body dying. And then
Yes.
they're like, oh, by the way, what you took was just water pills or whatever the placebo pill is.
Yeah,
You're fine. And then everything starts getting back to normal. So, how is it that a piece of information
that's right.
can be a cure? It isn't. It's the knowing. It's the knowing and your belief in that. And it absolutely works every time.
Every single time, if you give merit or credence to anything you hear, so if anything that goes on the airwaves and they tell you that there's a big boogeyman that has the capability of knowing when you're sitting down to eat your meal or you're standing up to go to the bathroom and knows when to come after you, and it can discern between Walmart and the gym, and you take that at face value and you believe it to be true, your body's going to say, okay, boss, sure, your wish is my command. On the flip side, if you go and you believe and you accept with absolute truth and certainty in every fiber of your being that your body is made of divine material and it works according to a divine template and blueprint, and it's waiting for you to command it in which direction to go, and you accept that as being the absolute truth and you execute on that, and you say health, your body's going to say yes boss, coming right up. And there's just no higher truth than that. So Amber,
Here's
before we close, please tell us about the work, the great work that you do.
Sure. Let me first add to that a little bit.
Yes.
So I put this to the test. So I decided rather than physically going outside and running, I went into deep meditation and I imagined myself running. So I visualized myself going out the door, jogging down the
Yep.
driveway, jogging down the street, jogging up the hill. I imagined the entire thing and my heart rate started going up.
No way. Actually,
So
I'm not
how is
surprised.
that how is that possible?
Not surprised.
I was just sitting on my bed with my eyes closed. And I know that there's studies about this where they
There
had a
are.
group of people that, one group worked out, one group imagined working out, and the people that were imagining it got a better workout than the
Yeah.
rest.
They do this with athletes. There was a test like this where people were told to imagine practicing the piano, like just hitting the keys on the piano. And I played around with this too, especially since obviously I came out of the hospital that time when I was for the stroke. But I remember one day I had this, and I'm very susceptible to it whenever the weather gets bad and there's a lot of pressure. I had a migraine, so I sat in bed and I just sat there and I imagined that there was something coming, like white light coming in my crown inside. And I felt like, I'm like, my brain is hurting, my head is throbbing. And I just imagined this white light kind of hugging every part of my brain. It was going in all the crevices, kind of running through. And it covered my entire brain and it went away. A
Yeah.
migraine went away. It was literally just that. But I believe that that was healing to me. And then I did the same thing. I remember I went for a pap smear and it came back, and it always does this. And of course, this is another show. I've talked about this at length on my Instagram. From all the chemicals that are used in the feminine products, and the body absorbs all this. All of these chemicals give an instruction to the body, so it kind of throws the frequency of that organ or of the organs that you're obviously looking at or testing. It throws that off, so now there's a different frequency which shows a dysfunction. And there was, I think, a Yale professor, I think it was Yale, way back in the day, who did a study on this. So anyway, so I go and I do the pap smear. I haven't done one in many, many, many years. But I went and did a pap smear, and it comes back and they say like you have abnormal cells. And this is so prevalent in women, like as you go
Yeah.
through life, because and especially if they're collecting the cells at the time when your own body is actually shedding cells, much like what you were talking about when we fast, how there's autophagy and the body kind of eats up all of these, cells that are mutated or damaged or uh, as part of their cycle of life at the end of it. So the body, the cervix, for example, sheds every 4 to 6 days, once a week, like it sheds its lining. So if you go, and no doctor tells you this, of course, if you go to have this pap smear done, let's say at the time when your own body is about to shed, and this happens so often every week that chances are they're going to catch up normal cells as they're shedding. And so they called me and they said, oh, you have abnormal cells. Your pap smear came back abnormal. So of course they were like, you have to do a leap and you have to do a this. They were offering all kinds of stuff. My doctor was like, if you were my wife, I would ask you to do this. And I'm like, if you were my husband, I would divorce you. I remember telling him this. And anyway, so I went home and I started meditating, and I'm like, I'm going to do a test. So I just started meditating, and every night I would sit in silence and I would imagine, healing energy. And I would remember telling my body, like, you are healing, you are healing, you are healed, you are healing, you are healed, you are pure, you are whole, everything is fine, I love you. And then I called my doctor and I said, okay, can we do that? That I want to do another PAP. So he said, sure. So I go in and do another PAP. And then they call me and they say like, oh, your results are actually normal. Like, what did you do?
Of course.
And I'm
Of
like,
course they were.
I know. So I'm like, I did nothing. Because if I was to say, imagine telling the medical community I meditated, they'll be like, oh my God, you're one of those. You're one of those woo, like tree
Yeah.
huggers.
Yeah.
So I didn't say anything, but I was like, as long as it's enough for me, like it validates that what I'm doing is right. It validates the kind of power I have over my body. So I'm
Well,
good
they
if
make a lot
anything
of money
comes.
if you take their medicines and their help. They make money. It's all a money pit, and
Yeah,
people
but it's worth
simply,
saying that a lot of meds, so the pharmaceuticals and all medications, drugs, whatever you want to call them, they are all a derivative of a very natural plant, like a natural product, so something that was obtained from Mother Nature. And then what they do is they sort of reverse engineer it. They see where all the chemical bonds, how they are bonded together. They change one or two, and then they're able to say, okay, like now we can patent this and sell it for profit. They can't do that with what Mother Nature makes. So, for example, if you're going to take something like an anti-inflammatory that comes from the medical world and they charge you for it and they could kind of play around with it to make it different from this version to the next version. However, if you go and let's say use turmeric as just as a or ginger for that matter, like that's always going to work. It's always going to be like that. They can't patent it because Mother Nature made it, so they have like no ownership of it. But they don't tell you. That's one of the things that I was actually very upset with the medical community when I went through the stroke, that they didn't tell me about the fact that I could just, the anticoagulant would be turmeric and ginger.
yeah.
um, but anyways, yeah. So the great work. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the great work, if you're interested in learning more about the great work, please go to dariusjwright.com and read the mission statement. You can also go to, I think it's thegreatwork.info, and the mission statement is there as well. But I highly recommend people going there and reading the mission statement and see if it resonates with you like it has with so many others.
Yes, and I think that it's so important that people understand the just the fact that we have so much power and that there is really nothing to fear.
So
Literally
here,
nothing to fear. No harm can come to the soul. None, zero. And that we have the power and we have the ability to go back to the divine blueprint and template, and nothing can ever override that. Nothing here on earth can ever override that. So we have the ultimate power. So yes, please go to dariusjwright.com, and that is DARIUSJWRIGHT. Now, before we end, Amber, if you would indulge me, and we did this on the other podcast when we were chatting, I do want to do a rapid fire round. This is my favorite part of all of my shows. So, one word answers, just like last time. Healing is.
what any one of us can do. I know you said one word, but the will of the soul in the spoken word. I'll say
That's right. The will of the soul and the spoken word. Diabetes is.
non-existent. It's a program,
Stress is.
another program,
Food is.
something that we don't need to eat as much of, like what they tell us.
Discipline is.
Discipline. I would say that discipline is also part of the will of the soul. You know, just that knowing, and with that knowing, you take the next steps, and that's discipline.
Okay. So it is basically what the soul makes it to be. Energy is.
The soul,
Health is.
what we all are. We are all health or healthy.
Fear is
something that we do not need to have. It's the opposite of love.
freedom is
The soul.
and healing is.
Oh, I think you asked me that one. So healing is something that we can all do to ourselves,
That's
right?
right.
We can all
Very,
heal.
very possible. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you wanted to add to all of this, Amber? I know that you have done so much work, and I think the great work that you do is so, so important for everybody to undertake so that they can at least get a glimpse of all the power that they have. But is there anything I haven't asked you that you would like the audience to know?
I would just tell everybody that it's so important to take time for yourself and quiet the mind. Put on a blindfold, whether you're sitting or laying in bed, block out the photons and go within. It's so important because what is unknown can become known in that quiet
Love
time.
that.
Be with yourself, which is the soul.
That's right. So what is unknown can be known. That is so, so powerful because, of course, when we get to see the known, which is our ability to heal ourselves, it's such a liberating feeling, and fear can dissolve in that very moment. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything that you did and for giving so many people so much freedom in the belief that they too can heal themselves. And of course, for being a beacon of light for those that even are afflicted with the very thing that you were in your diagnosis, diabetes, and for inspiring people to follow in your path to be able to heal themselves and guide their body towards healing. And thank you to the audience for being here for this episode and for just listening to what Amber and I shared on Health Confidential. And if this conversation opened your mind to what may be possible in healing, if it deepened the way you think about diabetes or any other disease or any other dysfunction or any other illness for that matter, or even if it helped you see the body in a new light, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to share it, to leave a review, or to send it to someone who may actually truly benefit from hearing this very story. And thank you for listening. And I will see you in the next episode of Health Confidential. Amber, thank you so much for being my guest once again.
Thank you, Simone. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you so much for joining me on Health Confidential, where healing is more than just symptom relief. It's a return to the body's original blueprint, guided by truth, intuition, and cellular intelligence. If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And follow me on Instagram at simone.gisondi for daily insights, behind the scenes wisdom, and holistic inspiration. To explore working with me and to get your own custom made healing protocol, visit simonegisondi.com and book your private consultation to start working together. Remember, your body is sacred, your intuition is gold, and healing is your birthright. I'm Simone Gisondi, and this has been Health Confidential. See you in the next episode.